Hello. Welcome to the January meeting of the Photographic Historical Society of New England. My name is Larry Wood.
All right, Dad. It's
Uh,
okay. So,
I am the new president of the organization, and I just wanted to let you know that we did have elections back in November, December, and I am the new president. Paul Roberts remains the vice president. Sid Chatterjee is the treasurer. He is also the membership chairman still. And Gloria Palazziotti Grice, I hope I pronounced that correct, is the new secretary. The board of directors has two new members, Alan Reich and Joseph Heller. And the other board members are people who have been on the board. Um, Other than that, I don't really have a lot to say. I am new and I haven't quite got a feel for the organization and all the pieces that are part of the organization, but I will be gaining that over time. And I welcome you, and I will turn the meeting back over to Dana, who will introduce our speaker. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dana G. I'm the program coordinator for PHSNE. Before I introduce our speaker, Charles Baldwin, just a few housekeeping announcements. I think I said this earlier, but please stay muted during the presentation. If you open your chat window, you can type questions into chat, send it to everyone, the default, so we can all see it. And at the end of the presentation, we'll do questions. The best way to view this is the speaker view. If you move up to the top right of your screen, you'll see view and an icon, and you can choose speaker. That would be the best way to view the presentation. Let's see. If you have technical difficulties, you can also type that into the chat, and we'll try and address those as we go. And let me introduce Charles. So Charles Baldwin is a photographer, media producer, and visual storyteller based in New York's Southern Tier. He has worked extensively in antique photography, historical image restoration, product photography, and location-based visual studies. His creative practice spans traditional cameras, digital hybrids, light painting techniques, and experimental optical tools. He's also active in multimedia, documentary film, radio, and narrative development, bringing a unique blend of technical precision and artistic imagination to every project. Charles, it is all yours. Take it away.
Great. Thanks, Dana. Thank you for everybody for having me and paying me attention. I'm flattered and just to be here talking with the Photographic Historical Society of New England. I attended the last meeting and it was a wonderful show and tell of everyone's cameras. I hope this talk measures up about my evolution in cameras and heading towards the concept of light painting. I hope all of you know what that is. It's not like it's anything new. It's been around for a while. Additionally, I want to thank Vladimir Kazan and Dana and Bonnie Regelman for getting this all set up so that I can do this presentation for you. So to map this presentation, I'm going to go through the list of cameras that I've used, owned, and worked with, different types of cameras, along how with an additional art form called video feedback, if any of you are aware of that, also plays into my interest with light painting. And then at the end, close out with various things that I use to light paint with. So this is the presentation page for this presentation here on the PHSNE. But I want you to imagine this, that you're a child and your dad gives you this as a Christmas present This is the Secret Sam attache case. I probably was about the age of this young man in the black and white. This is literally a not much more than a pinhole camera with a shutter on it. It took 127 film, and you had to know enough to use this knob to rotate to the next image, which I never was able to successfully do. So I ended up with a lot of double and triple exposures, and the two rolls that I can remember using, um, none of them came out. But Dad had a really good camera, and that would be this, the Voigtlander. This is, I believe this is made in Germany, and it came with one of the fan light flash bulb attachments along with a rangefinder. And when you incorporated all of it, you really did get some nice photographs. I can remember using it at least once because I can remember popping the hot bulb after I had flashed it, into a garbage can. So that one, though, usually stayed locked up. And with me being a child, you can imagine the scenario. The introduction of having a camera in my life was not something I was ever really encouraged to do. Um, I eventually ended up with this camera when I was a teenager. This is a Minolta 110 cartridge. I'm sure everybody knows about 110 cartridge cameras. This is a little bit more than just one of the Instamatics. It's only got a few settings. The interesting thing for me with this camera was the light sensor and the zoom that it had. The light sensor had the ability to know when it had brought enough light into the camera to close the shutter. And where that sort of played out, I don't actually have an image from then, from that time. At one point, I took the camera and I just put it on a car roof. And it was in the evening, and I opened the shutter and I let the camera do its thing. And this is what it kind of ended up with. If this is a train yard, obviously, but if you imagine a city street and a car driving through it, this is what I ended up with. And so this is the beginning of what you might call light painting, and it's just simply an extended exposure. Um, so from there, and this camera, I actually had to give that camera up. But in much later years, I ended up at a private school, took darkroom lessons from Mr. St. Clair, and we had a good SLR camera. It was a film camera, and I basically just went out and I started shooting anything. People, I shot the silverware in the hallway of the dining hall and the architectural ceilings that we had. There are some photos that still exist of that, but mostly they're friends and they're very grainy, and all I have really are the negatives at this point. But in doing the preparation for this talk, this apparently is about the first single lens reflex film camera out there. I don't, I'm hoping that all of you recognize it, the Contax. From there, this same private school, we had the Sony Portapak came on the scene. And this was really interesting because you could go around, you could catch motion video and so on and so forth. It's a tape-based system. We also had, and I can't show you a photo of this, but it had a three-channel production bay. And if you can imagine all of this built into a wooden console with this slider and switcher down here built right into the console, that's what we ended up having. And this is where this art form called video feedback, which is really the misuse of the camera because you're taking this camera and you're pointing it into its own monitor, which you're not supposed to do. But what you end up with when you do this is this effect where it starts to, you get this feedback loop. And as a result of doing that, it self-amplifies. Um, this is video here that you're seeing there, but you get this. And you may have seen this to some degree in the movie 2010, the follow-up to 2001. And you see this actually start to twist with the monolith twisting into the depth of the movie. But if you go and you get reasonably good at doing this, this is what you end up with. And I took this to a whole nother degree. So this is taking the camera and just pointing it straight into its monitor. And then you start to tilt the camera. And as you start to tilt the camera, it starts doing this. And you can really go into some really very fantastic psychedelic kinds of imagery with this. And what I ended up doing was with the other channel. So I had this going through one channel on the production bay switcher, and then I did the same thing with another camera, but I tilted it and did other things with it, and then mixed the two of them together. And what it ended up coming out as was a kind of series of traveling stars across the screen in front of you. And I've always thought I should have gotten some kind of recording of that made because I don't think anyone's ever kind of taken it to that degree. But it's really an interesting art form to play with and mesmerizing. And the professor, I was the only student that was allowed to do this, so I feel honored to have had the opportunity to do it at all. So now I'm going to move to the next screen here, and this might take me a moment because I've gotten off screen now. Let's see, how do I want to do this? There we go. So after going to high school, I ended up in Jacksonville, Florida, and I had a really wonderful professor, Professor Ron Moriso, who has an extensive set of credits to his name. When you went to his classes, which were the radio and television classes, you ended up doing something. And I ended up working at this studio, which is WJCT, which is Channel 7. It's in the PBS world. And this is a huge television production soundstage. And of course, as a student, the first thing I had to do was paint this entire floor. And it took like 2 or 3 days to paint all of it. And then you don't want to be in the room because of the paint. But it's an enormous soundstage. It's well respected. It's probably the largest in the Southeast. At least it was at that time. I don't know if it still is. From there and in there, we were using these. These are these pedestal mounted production cameras, and these all have a hydraulic lift system built into them. I can't get that quite up, but at the very bottom there, where you're starting to see it turn around, that's a hydraulic handle system that you can grab and you can very easily go vertical with it. You can pan it left and right. The controls on the left and right handles are very smooth. You can go at an incredibly slow rate that you can just barely perceptibly notice. They were Hitachi, I think, and Panasonic and maybe Philips cameras. And so these are all being run to a remote control room, which are running on tape. So we're still in the tape world at this point. And eventually we started to turn into digital. But we also had a Betacam, which was a wonderful camera. I did not actually get to use this. I worked with one of the producers who had one of these, and the interesting story about this, and it's a testament to Sony. They went out on a shoot, and he dropped it in the water, and they took it back to the tech team, and they basically opened it up, dried it off, and it kept on working. So from there, though, now we're starting to minimize the size of tape and we're getting into this was one of the newer cameras that came along about 1995, maybe 1998. And this is a DVC Pro. We had one of these. It was one of the thrilling moments for me because I was chosen to go shoot an important music professor in town who loved to play boogie woogie music, and I just love boogie woogie music, and I was allowed to go anywhere I wanted on the stage. It was a genuine thrill for me. But interestingly enough, I took that tape and I put it on the producer's desk, and apparently it never got used, which was really frustrating to me because I was kind of hoping I'd get to see my work. From there, we start to progress into the digital full-on world. Um, this is a Canon SX530, and I think I don't recall this real well, but I think I bought this off of the QVC channel in hopes that it would also be a high def camera, and it's not. It says full high def. I'm not inclined to think that it really is full high def. I think that there's some sales marketing going on there. But this shape now, I've realized years later, you'll find Sony on this, Panasonic on this, Canon on this. They've all gone to this sort of generic platform and they'll stick their brand name on it and sell the camera like this. It's a pretty capable point and shoot camera. And the interesting thing that's happening at this point is people are realizing that these SLRs are now extraordinarily good as video cameras. You don't have the bulk of the Betacam. You have something that, quite frankly, you can stick in your pocket and you can go and you can get some pretty good quality imagery. This camera is a little point and shoot. So now we've been past the Florida era. I ended up in Santa Fe, New Mexico. The video feedback artwork was something that was invented by a guy by the name of Richard Lowenberg, and he was part of a group of people, artists in Buffalo. He lives in Santa Fe right now, and he was one of the first people to take a video camera and point it into its monitor and start playing with this stuff. And he ended up at NASA, interestingly enough. And when I got to Santa Fe, a doctor realized the connection between Richard and myself and my fascination with video feedback. And he said, we've got to get these guys together. I ended up interviewing him, and I was there before the producer of the documentary was there. And Richard and I suddenly realized, oh, well, I have the .com called videofeedback.com because of what I went through in high school, but he was the inventor. And it was very interesting to have made his acquaintance. Um, so this camera became sort of after the 2008, 2009 banking crash. I came back to my hometown area of Corning, New York, and I took up photography. This is like it says here 64.95. I don't think I even paid that for it. And I don't think they make these anymore. But this camera was a really interesting and wonderful camera, and it produced this widescreen image. It's actually a composite of three. And I took those three images and I put it into Photoshop and then was able to marry all three images together. And this was interesting uh, just to see this display of Petrolia. And what you don't see is there's another garage bay that's full of exactly the same thing. And this is tied to me being involved with the New York State Film Commission as a film location scout. Um, we used to have a strong summer theater circuit here in the area, and I've been trying to sort of get people back to the idea of let's do drama productions, let's do a film production, and it just sort of seems to be dead in the water, which is incredibly frustrating for me. But I go out, and this is out in the middle of nowhere, and I'm photographing the outdoors of their house because they've got Petrolia on the outside. And she comes out and she says to me, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I hope you don't mind. I'm photographing your gasoline signs." And she said, "No, but let me show you this." And she comes in She opens the garage door and then I don't know if you can see this pose, but she just sort of leans into this. It's one of my favorite photos because you can see the love of this collection. And I don't know how else to say it, but this was the camera that gave me the opportunity to do that and then pull it together in Photoshop. So, still in the tape world, I ended up getting one of these. This is a really nice camera. It's got two sets of audio mics on both sides. I ended up winning a bronze medal award from the Global Music Awards for this camera. It's got XLR inputs on the other side of this that you can't see from here. And it's a tape camera. I've got a whole rack of tapes that it has recorded. I ended up selling this camera, but this is a wonderful camera. It is a high definition DV cam, and I miss it. I currently am working as an antique store photographer, and this is the camera that I inherited when the other photographer left. It's the Rebel T6i Canon. It's a good camera. I have to say that Canons are amazingly durable, and they really are a workhorse. I had to retire this though because I think it's a known issue. The sensor starts to turn pink over time, and it was becoming something that I had to fight with all the time in Photoshop. And so that wasn't working. And so we ended up going to this, which is the current workhorse for what I'm working with in the antique store. So, in continuing with sort of my love for video, right across the street from me, I bought one of these. I have two of them now. They're they're very inexpensive. They're small. They are high definition cameras with a surround sound microphone, and it's smaller than the size of your cell phone. They run on batteries. And I ended up going to Rochester once upon a time, and I came upon a group of people who were involved with ice skating, roller skating, not ice skating. And they were going to do an event. They hadn't been skating in like years. And they said, well, we're getting it all started back up again. I said, can I come and record it? And they said, sure. And I made a video out of that with these cameras. Um, these are very, for me as an individual, I can set them and forget them. And so they're pretty reliable. And so this is sort of the, if you will, this is the star of the show. So this is the TG6 Olympus camera. It's called the Tough. It has a water case. I've taken this camera and I've put it literally underwater. It can go something like 30 meters without its water case. I also have the water case, but it has the ability to do what we're here to have me show you, which is light painting. And it's one of the night scenery settings, and you simply put it into that setting. You open the camera shutter, and it takes an initial base photograph. And then what happens is the sensor knows when additional light has been introduced to the frame. So what you end up starting to have happen, and a lot of this is experimental for me. Let's see if I can grab this and get it to come down where it needs to be. It's going to you start to get the effect that I showed you with the train yard. And so now what's happened here? There it is. And so this was a test. Literally in the back hallway of my parents, you can actually see me. That's with me, my glasses, that's my face. And I'm just spinning a light in the hallway, and I'm letting the scene take place sort of for the sake of the camera. The Minolta, the 110, took these photos. And so just a couple of hang gliders. It's a good camera. These are 110 film. But then here we are with the train yard. And light painting started to be something. Once I had been in Santa Fe, New Mexico, Richard Lowenberg ended up showing me some really fantastic stuff that a guy was doing in Australia. He no longer does it. He had a website where he sold the equipment, and I started thinking more in terms of what light can look like when it's appropriately used, and then sort of mixing with the other idea of um, what you can do, because I like to sort of push things in various ways. One of the things I ended up doing was pushing the light balance. And this is, for those of you that use white balance, you know what I'm talking about. I think the way I got this was I took the camera and I pointed it at something like a bright green. And so now the camera is calibrated to this bright green. And so it completely retunes the whole image that you get. The idea here for me was, what can I do that makes it look otherworldly? And certainly this has an otherworldly kind of effect. But then coming back to more of this sort of light painting mindset where the light travels through the image. I did this about 6 years ago. This is a real popular photograph. Every time I post it in the Corning, New York area, Friends of Photography, people enjoy that photo. But if you think of the light as a paintbrush, so that's me across the street, and I'm actually taking this photo with the little point and shoot camera. This is the little GE. And I know it's the little GE because you see this purple in the upper left. That's the rangefinder light, and it's being reflected into the lens. I'm guessing there's moisture of some kind, and it's reflecting back into the lens, and it's leaving that clear footprint, if you will, or fingerprint. But then I started really playing with this, and I was doing it with the intention of what can I also see in the background with stars. And so this is a local highway about 30 miles from here. And this one sort of really set in my mind, and I don't know why. You've got this lovely aura in the background from the sun just going down, and then this car just drove in, and I kind of I fell in love with this photo. Um, and it's sort of at that point I started saying, well, what can I do? And more recently, I went out. Here's the Big Dipper. This is one of my favorite subjects. I'm actually standing on, if you look here in the foreground, you see a sort of a tarmac. I'm standing right underneath. Right behind me is a set of strobe lights for the local airport, and the local airport's off to the right. But this is where I'm really now at this point, I'm starting to become seriously interested in doing light painting. And then as a film location scout, I'm out in the countryside again, and I find this place with these enormous stone gates. Well, why is this here? And shortly after I get to this photo, and this is out beyond those gates. This goes back about 3/4 of a mile. And this was created because there's a super highway back behind those trees that you can't see. And they used the dirt from here as fill dirt for the highway. But I went over to this fellow's house. He was out mowing the lawn one day. This is his home. And I said, can I get written permission from you to go ahead and do some photography out there? And he agreed to it. Well, this turned into a whole nother situation. His dad had been prompted by the local historian to do his genealogy back to 1026 in William the Conqueror, and it's 3 notebooks. And I sat down with this gentleman. He's since passed away, and put the cameras on him. And I just said, tell me your story. And we recorded for 2 days. And that is what came out of asking for the opportunity to photograph at this location. So now if you look at this image, what you're seeing, you can see the silhouette of this hillside. It's right there. The light's backlighting it. And then I sort of let the child go loose in me. And this is a light. So I found this. You really can't see this, but this is a handheld pen light. But instead of the light being at the end, it's along the side here. It's an incredibly bright. Um, and that image that's out there is the image that created that. And you'll see there's a little red swirl in there. Well, there's the little red swirl. And so I went from that to really sort of saying, well, what can I do with this? The yellow that you see in this is actually, I'm wearing a yellow raincoat. And again, I'm just playing. There's really sort of no, what can I really paint with this? Um, and at one point I go out and I'm literally taking this flashlight, and these arcing spots of red are this flashlight, and I'm literally just flicking them up in the air to see what I can do. And then this horizontal curve that's around the grass off to the right, that's all in red, that is this flashlight, and I'm just wiping it across the grass. And then on the left, I'm taking a regular flashlight that's a white flashlight, and I'm going around the other way. And then, of course, I start really thinking, well, what can you really do? And I get to another park. This image, even though it's a little bit blurred, what's interesting to me is this silhouette and the way the clouds are backlit by the sun. But this is closer to home, and it became a lot more convenient for me to work in this space. And so I ended up going over here. And the way I ended up getting this, so the flashlight, this is an old glucosamine chondroitin bottle, everybody, and it's blue. And here's the flashlight, and there's your blue. And so with the shutter open, I simply went out and painted the grass. And then I had the green laser pointer. That's a perfect vertical line. And again, the Big Dipper's out there. And that was really thrilling for me to end up with something. It's not really very complicated, but I really do think the simplicity is what really makes it, if you want to call it beautiful, it makes it beautiful. So one of the esoteric things that I've done over the last 10 years is I've looked at what the real word means. Like Syracuse, you would think it's a Roman word or a Greek Roman word. It's not. It's Native American, and it means city of snow. Massachusetts, it is Native American for the Blue Hill. So I also took a course from National Geographic, and one of the things they said is sometimes the most important photo is the photo that's right behind you. So I'm playing with the stars again, letting the time exposure occur in this image. But then I get to this. This was the tree that was behind me. And uh, I I've done this tree now probably 6 or 7 or 8 times. I think this is the best of the photos that came out of that. It's very well focused, and it's this wonderful blue color. So I don't think I have any more photos where I've been doing the light painting. Yeah. Um, that I'm prepared to show. I'll just say it like that. I've been doing some more and I'm getting better at this, but I'm just going to go through sort of a number of things. So at one point, I'm also working on an invention. And one of the things that I had to do for the invention was come up with something that's going to look like a mock-up. So Penlight pool noodle was going to be part of a mock-up of my invention. And now I have a paintbrush, and it's a really big, call that orange pink paintbrush. And I haven't had the chance yet to really go out and do this. I tried in the last 3 days to do this a couple of times, but we've had really cold weather and it
Charles,
just, go ahead.
sorry, maybe you could stop screen sharing so we could see the pool noodle a little bit better.
Sure. And so thanks for the hint. And how's that?
That's good.
And so I'll just grab, so this is the blue pool noodle. And you can see this looks like a paintbrush. And this will, I'm confident, really show up um, when I get to the point of um, really knowing what I'm doing with this technique. But I've got the green laser pointer. I stuck a flashlight inside of a bottle. And the other thing, what I'm currently working with, this should show up. I built my own lightsaber. I went and I got a T8 fluorescent tube. This is the plastic cover. And then I bought a package of fairy lights and wrapped it around the tube and then stuck that on an old microphone pedestal. And so now I've got my own lightsaber, if you will, but it has the ability to do a number of different things. And I have another set of these lights that are multicolored. And maybe I've got one more photo that I can show you. I went to a local park. Um, yeah, there it is right there. And what I did, so I have
Just share your screen one more time.
yep, coming right up. Um, I have to find that. Where's the share? Is it that here it is. Okay, so I end up at a park and let me go ahead and get this so you can see it. This is just a sort of a typical Shakespeare in the round little arena, if you will. And I thought, well, let's go ahead and see what I can do there. And so what I ended up with there, and this is using the lightsaber going around the back, that's all in white. And then the red light has been exposed to the uprights here and around the bottom. And then I have one more that I really sort of, at this point, I said I'm going to stop because the weather was cold and I was getting tired and I was I'm working on a different project. But this is really sort of um, where I'm now starting to understand how I can structurally adjust and use the light painting technique to do some really interesting things. And what you have in the center was an attempt to create something of, I don't know how many of you have ever heard of a Metatron's cube, but I was trying to create a cube space floating in the middle of this, and it didn't quite work, but I hope you see where I'm getting better and better at doing this, and I've got a couple more ideas before I'm going to go do something different. And so, if there's anything that you would like to discuss, I can show you some of the other cameras that I've got. So let's end the screen share here. And there we go. So on the PHSNE front page, the black and white photo that's at the bottom, this is a different camera, and this really has nothing to do with light painting, but this is the K500. It's a Pentax camera. Uh, it came to me and it shoots this pseudo infrared, which is what the image on the PHSNE page that introduces this presentation. So I hope that I've been thoroughly entertaining and that you've all learned something. And what can I do for you now?
Thank you, Charles. We have a tradition of unmuting and giving our presenter a round of applause. So, folks, feel free to do that. Thank you.
Oh, well.
Uh, I'm going to check the chat and see if we have any questions. I see that Charles put a link to the light painting page that he was showing you.
Yeah, so this page has not been shown publicly until just a few minutes ago. So you're the first people to have the opportunity to take a look at it. It'll be adjusted a little bit as we go down the road. And I get more images like the blue tree that I'm really happy with and feel like they're presentable.
I had a question. The fellow in Australia that you mentioned, do you recall his name?
So let's see if I've got it on my links over here. I want to say it's something like Dave Smith, but that's probably not right. And he had a website that was called basically Circle of Light. Let's see here, Circle of Light. Um, and I'm going to say I don't see it right here. I have it bookmarked, but it would take me a few minutes to get that to. Let's see if I can get my bookmarks to open up. And
How many tabs did you say you had open?
about 237. And one of the things that I do that, the reason why I do that is it's so easy to forget what I'm working on. Between the invention and then the photography and then trying to get other things to happen, I open about 237 tabs. And then about every other day, I will cruise through every tab to see if I've forgotten anything. And it has paid off a number of times. The other thing that's interesting about doing that is I will discover something that sort of keeps my curiosity going. So, many of you would find that overwhelming. I'm certainly not trying to be overwhelming, but I do find it. There we go. So it was called, yeah, and I don't see it anymore. I had it up here. This is my bookmarks, and when I realized that he had stopped doing his work, I took it off my bookmarks. But he had an amazing array of tools. He had a brush tool that sort of looks like your clear scraper for your windshield when it ices over. And he had a light handle built up into it so that you could sweep large white sweeps with it. And a serious array of other kinds of painting kinds of light tools. Um, Most of mine are really sort of, well, how can I make this and not spend too much money? Like this T8 fluorescent protector tube, it's $5. And the fairy lights, I think, were $9.98. And so I'm trying to use these as best I can, but I want to say his last name was Smith, Smyth, and it used to be called Circle of Light. And I'm sure there are images from him that still exist out on the internet somewhere because he really did some fascinating work with it. The other artist that I know has done some wonderful work with it is a fellow by the name of Reuben, Reuben, Wu. And he's really staying current with all of this. The only other person that I know of who's really done some pretty fantastic work, I'm envious. He has been hired by Hollywood to do feature film work, parts of it. I don't think he's done a whole feature film, but a fellow by the name of Jordy, J-O-R Jordi, Koalitic, Koalitic. And Jordy will, if you look him up on Instagram, he will actually run a short video of he does interesting, I don't want to call it trick, but he does what you would call a trick photography where he shows you how he has embedded something like a woman on the shadow of a very large butterfly shadow, and he marries it together in such a way that she really looks like she's got butterfly wings. He's very good at it. And he has been somewhat inspirational because he's so good at it.
Looks like someone has asked, have you seen the light painting done by people like John Hartman and those he has taught? And there's a link there.
No, I have not, but I'm thrilled to see that you've got a link here. And yeah, so that's nice what he's got there. So let's do this. And um, I'm not, am I still in screen share? I don't think.
No,
Okay, so let's see if we can get the screen share to work. He's clearly got a high style mindset working here. And what's interesting to me about this is this sort of reminds me of the Andy Griffith show and the Mayberry gas station. We have this exact same gas station about 10 miles from here.
can't see it.
Okay, so let me go like that. And how's that?
It's loading. Yes, there it is.
And so this is clearly a well-composed photograph. And what's interesting is as I'm looking at this, I'm sort of studying the light and how the light's working. And if you look at the telephone booth in back, the top of it's pretty interestingly lit. And I'm guessing that light is coming from the mobile gas sign just above it. Um, the other thing that's interesting to me about this, and something that I've learned in the studio where I'm currently at, one of the things that bothers me about this is you on the front of this car on the right-hand side, the red Ruby car, you can see the light in the reflection of the car. It's not a hard technique, but I know how to get that same kind of um, look of the car without that light showing up on the car. And now that I've told you about it, you're going to start noticing this when you start looking at car photographs. I've not ever had the chance to experiment with this, but I've thought to myself, if you set up the studio in just the right way, you can get rid of those reflections and you can see just the car. And like I said, I've not had the opportunity to get it set up, but we're 45 miles from Watkins Glen, and I'm familiar with the people. Um, we have a fantastic car show that happens here about once a year. Um, and I hope at some point that I can keep sort of heading in this direction. The fella that has this gas station, I went here locally, I went over to him and I said, do you have any problem with me going ahead and photographing? And at this point, what I was experimenting with was Bill Cushenberry's silhouette hot rod car from one of the Beach Blanket Bingo movies from the early 60s. And it was a classic hot rod, one of a kind. The car got stolen, and I ended up um, contacting his brother. And he had two cars. He had one that was called, I think, the Future Car. Well, there's a guy on Facebook who's rebuilding that car, and a guy by the name of Barry Gramillon. And I contacted Barry and I said, do you know anything about Bill Cushenberry's car? And he said, no, but I know his brother and I'll be happy to give you his brother's email address. And I emailed him. I emailed him twice and I didn't get any response. Um, and what I later found out, it's really interesting how this stuff works. What I later found out is Barry Gramillon is the director of the movie about the Doors and Jim Morrison. At one point, he said to me, do you know who you're talking to? No. And then at that point, I'm just rattling on the keyboard with his name into the keyboard, and I realized who he was. But the silhouette car was a classic, and it disappeared. It got stolen shortly after the movie was made. And it's kind of been a passion project. And when I uncover a rock and somebody knows something about it, I pay attention. I'd love to get it in a situation like this. And what I ended up doing was photographing our Mayberry RFD gas station, and I superimposed a copy of the model, which is only about that big, in this full-size gas station parking lot.
We have a couple more questions. Hang on.
So,
Larry asks, what exactly does the tough TG6 camera do that makes it good for light painting?
so it's got a specific nighttime compositing setting. And this is one of the things that's interesting about these cameras is there's something in the feature set that sets them, people talk about you got to have your niche. Well, the K500 has this ability to do this pseudo infrared, which is a really interesting black and white result. The TG6 has this nighttime photography ability, and it's a composite system. So it takes an initial photograph um, of the base scene. And then depending on how much light is coming off that scene, you have so many seconds where it will do another acquisition. And what the sensor is doing and what the digital processing is doing is just looking for new light. So it's very specific to light that's being presented to the sensor. And you can literally go out, it will, I think the top end on the timer is something like 90 minutes. So you can really go out for quite a long time and you could do an enormous amount of different kinds of uh, painting into a scene. It's designed, that one particular setting is designed to allow you to do this really and have fun with it.
He says, have you ever used a hose master light painter?
So it kind of sounds, I have no idea what that is.
Let's see.
You want to unmute me?
Sure, you're unmuted.
Okay. I've been a commercial photographer for many years, and one of the items we used to use is an item called a hose master, which used fiber optics. And it was a generator. It was a light generator that had various brushes that you could attach and paint items in. You did a base exposure, and then you painted the areas you wanted with different attachments. And since it's called a hose master because the hose was probably 15 feet long. So you could work around a subject in a dark room and paint what you wanted to highlight on the item. I've also done it with million-watt flashlights, these huge ones. You can paint a tree. You can paint a building. It's no different than the early way of doing it with flash bulbs, where you ran around and you fired off flash bulbs wherever you wanted light. And if you gelled them with different colors, you would get different color. Now, the hose master was a big item, probably 15 or 20 years ago. They were ungodly expensive, but if you were doing commercial photography and that was the look that was in, they cannot be beat until you decided, hey, I can do this with a Maglite and put a gel on it and I can paint.
Well, I'll tell the only thing that I can say that's sort of tangent to that is a story from when I was a young child. Corning Incorporated. Dad was a sales manager, tech products and advanced products sales manager for Corning Incorporated. He sold the glass that went into the spaceships. And at one point in the early 60s, for show and tell, he handed me a flashlight that had the gooseneck fiber optic. It was one of the first ever of that run of the first that had ever been made. And as I was going out the back door, he said, "Don't break it because the fiber optic cable is so brittle on the inside." The only other story I would mention about that is he went to New York City once upon a time and he met Khrushchev, and Khrushchev said, "Yeah, we have that." And Dad said, "It's impossible. We just invented it." But I have not heard of a hose master.
Well, you might want to look at it was a fascinating piece of equipment because you could literally it was used primarily for studio work um, because you would basically have to work in a darkened room where you did a base exposure of whatever you were working on, whether as a refrigerator or jewelry, and then you went in with the hose master with different tips, and you could paint lines around it. You could highlight it. You could brush it, but it was a pretty sophisticated piece of equipment.
You know, it looks like the gear that they use, like with a SWAT team, to take if you reverse it, as opposed to being it sending out light, if you use it as an acquisition, it's like one of those little tubes that they telescope down into a peephole to see what's going on the other side. I've got an image of it here. Let me see if I'll bring it up. And let's do that. And then hit this. And that's what you're talking about right there.
Yeah, very similar, except the one, they came in larger ones and smaller ones. This is yeah, that coil is basically a fiber optic light channel.
Sure. Wonderful.
All right, folks. We are getting close to 8:30. So I'm just going to scroll through the questions one more time. Let's see.
For
Stephen,
Stephen, you're mentioning to take a look at his fine art images. I will do that. I've got his website up over here, and I'll be more than happy to take a look at it.
great. Well, Charles, I want to thank you for joining us for this really interesting and for sharing all of your work. I'm glad you included the link. You'll be able to have a PHSNE membership for the next year, so we hope to see you at further presentations. Everyone, please, one more round of applause for Charles. And briefly, just next month on February 1st, we're going to welcome Dr. David Jentz, who will present on the Kodak Retina. And I did just see the Tommy Ka show at the Addison Gallery of American Art in Andover. That's wonderful. If you have a chance and you're in Massachusetts, that would be cool to check out. And all right, so everyone, thank you, Larry. Thank you for starting us off the new year. And everyone, thanks. Good night. We will see you in February. Thank you, Charles.
Thank you.